morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, depending on where you are, what time you are listening to this. My name is Winston Henderson, and this is the Revenue Alignment Podcast, where we help marketers to educate them to prove their value, to show their value to the organization. Today, we have our very first guest of this podcast, which I'm pretty excited for. I hope I can pronounce his name properly. It's Thibaut Souyris. I hope
Good
I got
job.
it. Awesome.
Yeah, it was done properly.
It took a few practice rounds for me to actually get it, but that's good. So, Thibaut, welcome. Glad to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Winston. Really nice. We had a few issues with our setup microphone, but now we can actually hear each other and talk to each other. So glad to be here.
Yeah, it's great because, yeah, as you said, we had some issues, but I'm glad that we could finally have this conversation. So, just to give you guys a few points, or talk about Thibaut's background a bit. So he has held several positions in sales at the senior management level, from being a growth manager to VP of business development, senior sales manager. He's a guest writer on G2 covering topics in sales development. He's the CEO and founder of SalesLabs that trains and coaches tech sales teams to learn new meetings and generate more opportunities, as well as being the founder of the Selling Advantage community and co-host of the B2B Sales podcast. So he has a lot of experience in sales. So definitely excited to hear from you, Thibaut, as we get this conversation started.
Yeah, that's a lot of job titles. I forgot I had so many. So yeah, that looks impressive, but it's not as crazy as it sounds.
And that's not all of it, folks, because there are some that I didn't include. But let's just say he's pretty I would say adept in what he does in sales. So Thibaut, before we actually get into the meat of the matter, why don't you just tell us your story, how you started out in sales to how you actually get to where you are right now?
Sure. So I started in sales when I was 15 years old. So I was at the time a school student basically, and I wanted to do my pilot license, my private pilot license. And my parents were, I never wanted to become a commercial pilot. I just wanted to do it as a hobby because it was a passion of mine. And I asked my parents if they could pay for it, and they told me never. And basically, they said you actually are going to have to find ways to make money and pay it for yourself. So my grandfather suggested that I go to the local airfield in Switzerland, where I'm from, and then I just went to see some aircraft owners and proposed to clean their airplanes, and they accepted. So I was able to do 20 Swiss francs an hour at the time. I managed to save the money in around 3 years, and I got my private pilot license before I even had my driving license. So that was my first kind of a stint at sales. So selling, then cleaning the airplanes. And then I actually joined a company called Buddy Pilots, where I was a co-founder and VP business development. We failed this company in Canada for many reasons, but basically we were not really solving a real problem, and the market was a shrinking market with not much future. And so I came to Berlin, where I live right now, started working for a company called Applause, and I went from 0 to 2.5 million of recurring revenue, of annual recurring revenue, took the team from just basically me to 10 people. And, I learned a lot about B2B outbound prospecting, how to close enterprise deals, 6-figure deals, and these kind of things. And also then I left for another company where I actually stayed for 5 months. And then I got tired of working for others and making others rich. So I thought about founding my own company and doing sales training. So I've been doing that for 3 years now. And as you've said, I have a podcast, I have a community, I created a company where I do coaching and training. I do plenty of things. I post regularly on LinkedIn. And it's been 3 years. And as I like to say, I've never had so much time and money. So it's been pretty nice because I can actually choose what I do with my time without having to worry about money, which I think is the ultimate goal in life.
Right, definitely. And you said throughout your career, leading up, it seems like it's been pretty good for the most part, but I'm sure, just as with any career, you had challenges. So what are some of the things that you experience in terms of challenges in general, but also things that would actually hinder you or make it difficult for you to meet sales targets that you were given?
So there's obviously many challenges, and I think they shaped me in that case. If you talk about, we'll take, let's say, my B2B sales career that started like around 10 years ago. One of the biggest challenge I had was that the company was from the US with the, I was taking care of the French market. And it was very hard to actually go and sell to the French market because there was no marketing. The product was actually very expensive, and it was pretty challenging to actually go and educate the market. So a big challenge was that for all my colleagues who were in the US or Germany, they had a lot more marketing and support, and it was a lot simpler for them to actually go open accounts and grow these accounts. So I've seen these challenges, but I always liked kind of like tackling these specific challenges where I was prospecting, purely cold, doing some education. And I always took a lot of pride in actually opening the deal, closing the deal, renewing the deal, and just like taking care of it myself. I've never been like a very much of a team player with like other kind of team members in sales. I remember when I was working my last job, once I went to a tour. Basically, I live in Berlin. So whenever I was going in France, I was going to see 3-4 companies in Paris all at the same time. And at some point, the founder came, say, hey, I'm going to come with you. And he was just starting like blabbering, talking about his company and how cool it was. Whereas like French people didn't even speak English. And so I just hated working as team. And so, like the thing of having no marketing has been a big challenge, but I learned how to go to market just by myself. It's been really useful. And there's ton of a challenge when you are selling a product and, like the product is not that great. That happened to me a lot. You're selling a product and it's not solving a specific problem. So all these things have been very, interesting challenges for me to solve and to understand, what you need to do to be able to sell properly.
Right. And I know you said that, you relished in the challenge of going out there, going cold. But should I say, how much difference do you think it would have made if you would had that marketing support, first of all? And secondly, what was the difference between, you going out there cold as to the environment that you were used to versus other people that you were seeing that had that marketing support, and how it made things better or easier for them?
So obviously having a good marketing support is great. What it means by good marketing support is first having good like lead generation. That's first thing. And then, having a marketing that is centered on problems more than solutions. So very often, if you look at any copy of a website, you'll see request a demo, or we are doing these 30% more or whatever. And they always talk about what we call towards language. So in life, humans have two kind of tendencies to either try to avoid pain or look for pleasure. And pain avoidance for 70-80% of people is actually more important. So, it's if you lose €100 or if you win €100, you're actually going to make more stuff to avoid losing 100 than to make 100 more. So that's one thing that is important, is that marketing teams understand lead generation and understand that people are looking to solve problems and they don't want any new shiny objects. So that's the first thing. What I've seen is that a lot of people who had all this support were in a really great position. But nowadays, I can see that they are, a lot less independent, and they actually are not really able to kind of do stuff by themselves. So that's one thing I've seen very much. So these people have been successful in these jobs, but whenever the kind of like inbound source is kind of tarnished, then you have a problem. I always call that it's kind of like the Saudi Arabia problem. Whenever you have like ton of oil and it's going great, at some point the oil will run out, and if you didn't plan for that, you're in trouble. So that's the same thing for me. I've always kind of lived in a world where leads were basically non-existent. So you have to go hunt for them and find them yourself. And so I think that's really like what the big difference is, that it's been a challenge. It was great for the others, but you don't have much control on marketing and what they do when you're in sales. So you have to be able to create your own opportunities and your own luck.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned that. The reason why I was laughing is I can definitely relate to what you're saying, because I have a bit of experience in sales as well. So I'm coming from that same era where there was no, demand generation or marketing expected to generate inbound leads. It was just, you have your prospecting list, you pick up the phone, you make those phone calls, you do those office visits. And as you say, you try to create that opportunity for yourself and close those deals. So it just brought me back to that experience, which was funny. But in terms of, All right, so we have marketing supporting sales now. It's easier for them. Probably you can share with me some of the ways how um one of some of the things that sales would actually need from marketing right now. Because I mean, yes, I also believe that if you're a sales professional, then you should be able to go there and create your own opportunity without relying on marketing. But we live in the era now where sales is heavily dependent on marketing to generate those initial leads.
Mhm.
So from your point of view as a sales professional, how can marketing better support sales? Not just in terms of lead generation, but even throughout the entire sales process.
So I think it's a vast topic. There's a lot of things you can do, but one thing that is very important for marketing is to understand who they are talking to. So very often what you see is a disconnect between what like prospects really want and what marketing actually is putting out there. So they'll talk very much about, as I told you, about features, about value and things, how like how things are going so much better when you use your product. Whereas what you need is first to find like a problem you can solve, like your product is solving, and talk about these specific problems. And so one thing that is very important is, like, first of all, having the copy, for example, of your website, or having podcasts, or having like all the kind of like marketing tools to be oriented towards problems. That's the first thing. That's going to first help a lot of things, because if you go and see, for example, like if you go on a website and you have like a quiz or calculator that allows you to find out how big your problem is, that's going to be way more powerful, and actually people will book more meetings, therefore helping sales way more than to actually say what's the potential uplift you can have with XYZ solution. So that's the first thing. Second thing is this before after. If you think about an infomercial, where it's actually very kind of weird, but you have this black and white thing where people are saying, oh, before I was using this specific knife, I had like 20 knives, they were all like never sharp, and I cut myself and never worked properly. So that's kind of the before, and then the after. With this specific like crazy knife, you have one knife, it never runs out of like sharpness, and you don't cut your finger, and you prepare good food. That's actually what you need to be able to do. Later in the sales process, people want to see case studies before, after. What's the problem we had? How did you solve it? And what's the quantified outcome with that? So I think that's two really important things in marketing that they can do for sales, is understand who's the customer, what problem they are trying to solve, and then communicate how their solution helps solve the problem.
Right, that's a very good point. And just to dig into that a bit more, how would marketers be able to find out this information? Because I mean, it's not like this information is readily available, on the internet, where we're approaching B2B tech, let's say startups, for example, versus enterprise. How can marketing do the necessary due diligence research to gather the information that they can use in their copy or their marketing campaigns?
They have to talk to customers. So that's the thing, is if you have marketing teams and they don't actually talk to customers, that's a problem. So they have to be able to jump into calls. They have to be able to understand, maybe with a customer success manager, so people who are working with current customers, what is the problem you're solving, So I think it's really being really involved way more than what you can typically see, and ask them questions about, what's the problem you're solving. So for example, asking feedback calls with testimonials is a great way to understand that. What's the problem you're solving? What was the problem you were trying to solve when you approached us? How do we do that? And you understand this. And then you also have to be able to maybe listen to prospecting calls. You have stuff like Gong, for example, or Chorus. They are used a lot by marketing teams to understand what is the language of your customers. So that's one first thing. Another thing you can do is to go and listen to podcasts, interviews, webinars, everything that is actually already available, where people, your persona, your ICP, are actually talking about the problems they are trying to solve and what they think about every day. So these kind of things really help you understand their vocabulary, their language, use that. And what you have to think is, this C-level, all these people, they actually have jobs and they try to solve problems every day. They try to put out fires every day, and they often will talk about this specific language. So if you think about, I call that, like, it's a methodology I use, which is called proactive selling. We have above the line buyer and below the line buyer. The above the line buyer is like your fiscal buyer, and your below the line is your like user buyer. You're above the line, just see these people as like a really high-end soccer coach, for example. But I don't know, I'm not into soccer, whatever, but like apparently, you have Chelsea or whatever, you think about that. These people, they think about one thing is how can they avoid being fired at the end of the season? And they have to make their team win. And that's the only way they avoid getting fired. And that's the same, for high kind of like level sports. How, let's say you take Formula One, how do the, like the boss of Red Bull or Mercedes avoid being fired next year? And that's what they think about. And if you can help them make a dent in that problem, that's going to be really like helpful. So marketing people should understand that. And that's going to fuel the conversation much better with sales.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I definitely agree with you on the whole point about talking to customers. But I also want to follow up with this because I've seen this conversation on LinkedIn where marketing is saying, well, we're unable to get access to the customers because the sales team, probably they're in the middle of trying to close a deal, or probably it's their account that the sales teams are very protective, or should I say the sales reps are very protective of their accounts. How can marketing communicate to these sales reps then to say, well, it's beneficial to you as the sales rep for me to talk to the customer because this is how it can actually help, or should I say, how can marketing make that business case? And I think that's the best way to put it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. So one thing is definitely using technology. So if you think, as I said, Gong or Chorus would be great ideas where your calls are recorded, and that helps the marketing team access that in an asynchronous way, because you don't want marketing team to be in the way. What you can do is like having shadowing calls where people will actually listen and not talk, because you don't want to have like, the last thing you want as a salesperson is have a marketer come and actually start pitching. That's really the last thing you want. So it's actually having the expectation that people will listen and not participate. That's super important. And as I said, the technology, I think Gong, Chorus, and this kind of tech can really help. So that's really what I would recommend in that case.
All right, awesome. And just a follow up to that, because I mean, it's no secret that marketing and sales, don't get along for some reason. I can't understand why. Probably because I come from both the marketing and the sales background, so it seems obvious to me. But marketing and sales doesn't get along. So in terms of marketing and sales alignment, what can marketing do from the perspective of sales to get that better alignment, to say, all right, marketing, these are the things you can do. And as someone who is a sales rep or a sales professional, then I'll be more open to that alignment because I see how it benefits me.
So I think it's not so much marketing that has to do, or I think it's a kind of mixed responsibility. But the first thing is, marketing is a super vast term. You can be doing branding and you're going to be in marketing. You can be doing lead generation, you're going to be doing marketing. In some cases, SDR teams are actually attached to marketing teams. So the idea is that, first of all, you have to understand expectations. So when I was working at Applause, the company I took the French team over, we had like a marketing team, and they were focused mostly on organizing events. And at some point, they were doing some kind of ABM strategies, account-based marketing. And so these things are great, but they are very, very remote from generating leads or people who actually want to sit with you and in a call. And so in sales, that's what we are interested in, like good deals or good opportunities, good leads, people who are really like SQLs, they want to talk to us, they have like budget, and they have, they are really these perfect leads. So this is actually very hard, and it comes, like there's tons of different things you have to do to be able to find these kind of leads. So it's aligning the expectation that marketing team, some people, if you're in branding and you're taking care of events or running podcasts, I'm not going to expect you to generate me leads right away and keep you accountable for that. So that's first understanding what it means. And if you want to actually kind of like align everyone on that, aligning people on revenue is something that's going to help. So you have to basically get some kind of variable part or bonus part that is shared by the whole revenue team. That's why you see the job of chief revenue officer existing. Like the main job of a CRO is to avoid the VP of sales and VP marketing from ripping off each other, basically. That's really like they are made to actually make sure these two people communicate and don't kill each other.
Right.
So it's understanding that the revenue team, has to be incentivized on revenue, both sales and marketing. So I think that's one thing that is very important in there. And yeah, just understanding that someone who works in branding will help you, but they will not generate leads for you, so don't expect to have leads coming from them.
Right. And two questions I have, follow-up questions from that. First of all, how would you define an SQL from a sales point of view or as a sales professional?
So SQL, sales qualified lead, I mean, the kind of traditional definition is someone who actually wants to talk to sales. So someone who clicked on book a demo or request a call. That's what I would define. Then you have scoring and grading that can be important. So marketing has this kind of responsibility of filtering out, is this person behaving the score well? So are they downloading watching webinars, going on our website, showing intent? So high score is important, but then there's grade also. If someone is showing intent, like watching webinars and downloading stuff, but this person is like at Coca-Cola, for example, and I'm selling for Coca-Cola, that's great. But if this person is an intern, I don't want to talk to this person. I want to be able to kind of like keep building this kind of awareness and going, maybe with an ABM strategy, going higher up. So that's the first thing. So SQL for me is this goal, but you want to make sure that the score and the grade are good, basically.
Right, great. And the second question now is, as it relates to that I guess compensation. I think that's the term that you use. I'm not entirely sure, but you spoke about aligning on revenue, which I definitely agree on. It's obvious how sales will be compensated from a revenue standpoint in terms of generating that revenue because they get commissions. Do you have any suggestions on how marketing could be compensated from a revenue standpoint to incentivize them to want to focus on that more?
So I think one thing you could do, for example, it all depends on the type of work you're doing, but as a marketing team, so what works better is to actually incentivize the team on a team achievement. So you could actually, we enter into very complicated compensation stuff in here, but you could actually have a bonus for reaching a certain revenue threshold, a team bonus. So if the team is reaching this amount, then you get a bonus. But you can also do some stuff that are more tactical. So for example, I told you about talking about problems and building case studies. You could incentivize marketing teams to go and look for case studies, where they go. And the more case studies they're able to shoot, where they meet the customer, they have videos and they can deliver a case study on the website, the more they actually get some money. So if you are able to do that with a specific methodology where you show before, after, and you show clear outcomes, first, as a marketer, you'll understand a lot more the problems you're solving, and that's going to help the sales team a lot more. So that's a great way to align by saying, if you tell me, each case study you're able to deliver in this quarter, you get 2,000 euros or whatever as a team. That could be an example of how you align them. So you have this revenue, but you have these activities that help generating revenue, and marketing should be more responsible of that, which is like the case study. So it's understanding these little things that help you generate the revenue and incentivize people on that.
Yeah, I love that. I absolutely love that response about the team bonus, and then you have certain activities that will help to lead to that end result that you want of revenue. I definitely love that response. So I know you coach a lot of sales professionals. As you mentioned, that's what you mostly do now. What are some of the main challenges or the common challenges that you've, whether through coaching or conversation, that some of these sales reps have when they come to you to get coaching?
So a lot of challenges are, the biggest challenge I see is people don't really know how to organize themselves. So as an SDR, very often what's happening is you have targets, and they see these targets, and often they're like, well, this is a big target, so I don't really know how to reach that target. So they prospect a ton for a few weeks, and then they get burnt out because they send 200 emails or do 200 calls every day. And what you see is that if you're building a proper sequence, you're going to send 200 emails on Monday, and then you're going to do 200 on Tuesday. Then on Wednesday, you're going to do 200 new plus the 200 follow-ups, and then it kind of piles up, and then you just can't hold. So they don't know how to structure their day. That's the first thing. Second thing is they don't really understand how people buy, and they don't really get that prospecting is made to start conversations and build relationships and then book meetings. So they get this obsession to actually put their calendar link and say, hey, I want to book a call with you, because they're incentivized on calls. And so that's the big problem is they go way too fast, and they don't understand that people, you're total stranger to them. So you need to build this rapport And so they have issues with that. And the third thing is they really don't know how to write stuff. They don't know how to communicate in a way that is simple, problem centric. So they don't really know how to do a proper copy, which is not that challenging. It's just really like having simple frameworks and understanding that people are actually moved by problems that relate to them. And if you talk about these problems and how you can potentially solve them, that's going to be like a good conversation generator. So that's really like these kind of things. And what is very fun to actually see is that you can see, like, you can just watch this old profession around you that are doing sales. For me, I love to take this example of the French. I'm from France. My grandparents live in south of France. And every Wednesday in south of France, when I go, there's like a market, like just like a town market in the village by the church. And when you go there, it's the exact idea. You can make yourself of a French market, but people are coming here and, you pass by and they just give you stuff, say, hey, try this for free, try this tomato, try this sausage, whatever. And then, it creates this crazy experience where you try it and you're like, wow, that's great, and then you want more. And, SDRs, they just have to build the same kind of experience where people get like a small teaser, a small idea of how good something can be and how it can solve a problem. In that case, the tomato is like solve the problem of hunger. And so they don't really, understand how to do that. And so my job is to teach them how to build this kind of French market experience, basically, when you're prospecting.
Yeah, that's awesome, because basically you just, for the marketers who are actually listening to this, you just gave them 3 to 4 ways how they can actually help sales and make their jobs easier based on the challenges that they have. So going back to the same thing that you mentioned of knowing the challenge of your audience, which, in this case, you have the internal audience, which would be sales, and external, which would be customers. So I definitely love that. So before we actually go, Thibaut, is there anything that you'd want to share just in general from your years of experience and expertise that you can share with marketers, that is, on how they can better prove their value to the organization?
So I think marketing is extremely important. I think what is very important when you're doing marketing is to make sure that you understand what's the specialization you want to have. So should it be SEO, mail marketing, paid campaigns, whatever. So first of all, is really understanding what is really the core skill you want to work on. And one thing you can do, actually go and Google T-shaped marketer. I created a program called T-shaped sales development, but it's based on T-shaped marketer. So the idea is that if you can have 2-3 skills that are core skills where you're excellent, for example, building landing pages, great copy and great SEO, it doesn't mean that you actually should not understand, in general, how all the other things work. And, if you think about your skills, there's a depth of skill, that is going to be really profound in these 3 things. But then you're going to be able to do like all the other skills in marketing that are interesting, have a kind of generic understanding of it. So if you look at your skill kind of graph, it looks like a T, basically. That's why it's called T-shaped marketer. So that's the one thing you can do right now to make everyone's life easier and prove your worth, is to really understand your core skills and develop secondary skills. And the more skills you have, the more you'll be able to try experiments, run experiments, and see some, rapid experimentation and quick results. And that's going to help you actually help any organization of any size actually in marketing. So that's what I would recommend.
Right, great. And if people need to reach you, where can they go? How can they find you?
So on LinkedIn, actually, Thibaut Souyris, actually very simple. I guess I'm the only one in there on LinkedIn. They can also go on my website called SalesLabs.io, and they'll find some resources. But I post every day on LinkedIn, a lot of things that are related about sales, but it's very close to marketing. So they can just follow me on LinkedIn and connect with me.
All right, Thibaut Souyris, everyone. Thanks so much for being a part of a guest on this podcast. Definitely appreciated the value you brought here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, take care and all the best.
This has been the Revenue Alignment Podcast. Join us next week where we have more amazing content to help you demonstrate, communicate, and prove your value at the C-suite level. I'm Winston, your host, and this is a wrap.